Toby, you crazy. Toby, you crazy. Toby, you crazy. Toby, you crazy. Bougiewild, 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 Bougiewild. I said the universe gave it to me. I said the universe gave it to me. Bougiewild, 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 Bougiewild. I said the universe gave it to me. I said the universe gave it to me. Bougiewild can't be boxed. I'm free to be me. I'm living life, creating legacy. I'm living my dream. They call me extra. They say I'm doing too much. Hello, you guys, and welcome to another episode of Transparent Table Talk. I am your host, Bougiewild. You guys, Transparent Table Talk is a platform where people are willing to speak about their personal life from a humble, transparent, and a vulnerable place. The purpose of this show is to bring awareness to topics society does not discuss that have people suffering in silence due to shame or blame. The vision is to create a place for people to have conversations without fear of judgment. The reason is because these are conversations that I wish someone would have had with me. The goal is to inspire and empower, to show people that you have a choice to live a happy life. The mission is to heal this hurt world by showing them that we all go through the same things and that we have a choice to be reborn and live in the spirit. I'm excited about tonight. Tonight's guest is all the way from New Zealand. I am excited because Avril Brown is a mom coach, mind body practitioner, E4 trauma trained and certified in core skills trauma treatment. Personally, motherhood brought her to her knees. It was a catalyst for massive healing for her, which resulted in her healing her relationship with herself from over 20 years of anorexia into generational patterns and lifetime of nervous system dysregulation. She now empower moms to heal their relationships with themselves. In doing so, create balance, shame, and guilt-free relationships with their kids and live fully and authentically alive. You guys, let's welcome Avril Brown to Transparent Table Talk. Hello.
Hi, Yolanda. It's so good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being our guest. As all of you all are aware, Transparent Table Talk is different. The guests get to choose the title of the episode. I'm going to let Avril introduce her episode by asking her what brought you to Transparent Table Talk.
What brought me to Transparent Table Talk was I wanted to share my story because I know how crippled I was by shame for a very long time. And we don't have to be. It doesn't have to be like this. I know how disabling it was for me and how it stopped me reaching out for the level of support that I needed. And it stopped me tapping into who I really was because I felt so much of me had to be hidden. So much of my story had to be hidden. And so when being on Transparent Table Talk allows me to share my story so other people don't have to feel that same thing.
And like you said, the title of the show, You Are Not Broken. So she's going to talk to us tonight about from silent shame to self-empowerment. I love the title of that show. And I can relate as well, being broken, as you put in the introduction, the generational patterns.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah. I had, like you mentioned there in the introduction, I had anorexia for over 20 years. Addiction and eating disorders ran in my family. But it wasn't just that. It was beliefs that ran in my family, poverty beliefs. I came from Ireland, where we have a history of poverty, of famine, of war. Uh, that those histories, that digs really deep. It passes through our DNA. So it was that intergenerational patterns of feeling like we weren't enough. I wasn't enough. I had to silence myself. I was too sensitive. All of these sort of patterns pass through intergenerationally. It's not just the big stuff. And we don't even realize that's what it is. We just think it's part of us, and we hide it. We push it down. We try to make it not be there. And it was the same with the anorexia. I there's so much shame about mental health. And with anorexia, like, that is the mental illness with the highest mortality rate. Of 1 in 10 people die of it. I had long-term anorexia. I was told I would never heal from it, let alone live. And there's a lot of shame held about that over the years of, I had this mental illness, which it's just not. It's a mental health. It's a disconnection from ourselves. This is what essentially it was for me, was a disconnection from myself. And by holding on to the shame, what I was doing was I was pushing those parts of myself even further away. I was saying there was something wrong with me, and I felt so broken and like there was so much wrong with me. And that just kept me in that spiral of that loop of pushing parts of me away rather than holding that part of me and saying, I can see that you're hurt, but you're not broken.
Right, right. And I can relate with what you're saying about the poverty mindset. I too grew up I'm in the United States. I was born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee. The generational mindset, I call it the conditioning. The conditioning was the poverty mindset, the fear, doubt, and insecurity. And what we don't realize is that when we're born into the world, what we end up seeing in our environment and our experience become our norm. And because of the subconscious programming, is basically what happens is we become programmed. We don't realize that it's a barrier. And so we live under these expectations. We live with this outlook on life of fear, of doubt, of insecurity, of shame, because it's normal for us. So I too relate to what you express, the conditioning, and we call them generational curses, but what I've come to realize is that it's just the mindset. It's how we are programmed. It's how we're programmed, and it becomes our norm. And until we step outside and see something different, that's when the work start. Because although I have awakened from my conditioning, that's when the work started, and I have to implement a practice every day to combat the battle of my mind of what was conditioned in me versus what I choose to become. So I commend you for um overcoming and even sitting here today, because the first step is speaking your truth. So what was your aha moment? Like, what happened to you in your life that made you wake up and say, oh my God, this has to change?
Oh, this is such an interesting question because I had been reading self development books since I was about 14. Obviously, I was deep in anorexia, so I knew there was a lot going on for me. And I thought by just doing um like changing my thinking, that it would all change for me. But nothing was changing. Nothing was changing for over 20 years. Then I had our son, and that was when the shift happened, because when our son is neurodiverse, and he really, the world was very big for him when he was born. Um, and as a mom, I struggled to cope with his crying, his screaming, his big emotions. And I realized at one stage I felt disconnected from him. This was a child I was told I'd never have. And I felt like there was something between me and him, and some barrier there. And it absolutely broke my heart. I didn't know what was going on. I saw all these other moms, and they were so deeply connected with their children. And yet I struggled. I felt very dysregulated. So his big emotions would create a lot of, I would call it sort of fire in me, rage in me. I wasn't angry with him, but there was something sparked inside of me that I didn't know and I did not like. And it was then that I realized this was not about him. This was stuff I'd been pushing away my whole life. And I had to do the work on me, because if I didn't do the work on me, I was going to pass my stuff on to him. And that was my big aha moment, was when I realized that I had to do the work, otherwise my stuff was going to be passed on to my child. And not in a shaming way. It was just a realization way. I could have shamed myself around it and said, oh, you're going to pass this on to him. But it wasn't like that. It was just this opening up of, wow, this is your opportunity to do what you haven't done for 20 years on yourself, and actually do this healing work, so that so that your child can just have his own stuff to deal with, because there's lots of stuff out there in the world. And essentially it was around that time that I had several big ahas, but another one was where it just dropped in for me that there was nothing wrong with me. Yes, I felt disconnected from my child. Yes, I felt very dysregulated. But this was a message. There wasn't anything wrong for me. My child was here showing me in the mirror what was going on for me. And I could push it away, as I'd done for a lot of my life, or I could look at it and say to myself, okay, I have this beautiful opportunity to change my life and change the trajectory of my child's life, because of how I deal with this mirror that is being shown to me.
Awesome. Awesome. Like the conversations that I'm having with the guests on Transparent Table Talk, it's like you all parallel with my life. It's like I can see in the mirror through you all's life, and then my experience growing up, the person I am, just to sit and listen to you all stories. The whole purpose of this show is to show people that we go through so many similar things, and yet we feel so ashamed to talk about it, and we're suffering in silence. And just to listen to you sit and say, I had to do the work on myself because I did not want to pass that down to my child. A lot of people need to be aware that it's okay to do the work. What type of things did you have to do when you say you had to do the work? What, paint us a picture of doing the work? What did that require? What is that?
So the most important thing that I did for me was regulating my nervous system. So this was why I realized the talking stuff had not worked for me over the years, because my brain did not feel safe to take on board new thoughts and new beliefs. So I had to regulate my nervous system at a somatic level. So in my nervous system, which is the language that our nervous system talks, is our body. So I couldn't just tell myself I'm safe, because I did that lots. I told myself I was safe, but 2 minutes later I was feeling really anxious again. So I had to talk to my nervous system at the level it understands, which is through the body. So I did a lot of somatic work to support my nervous system to feel more regulated. I did a lot of sitting with myself. instead of distracting. And I don't mean meditation particularly, I mean sitting with myself, as rather than distracting myself on the phone or in a book or in a journal or anything. I just to get to know myself again. So I had to learn who I was. What did I want? What were my beliefs and what were other people's beliefs that I had taken on board? What was the conditioning versus what was my truth? And that's a tricky one because there's a lot goes on out there, that's a lot of noise in our head, and I had to just find the space and quiet that noise that was going on to find out who was Avril, who was she underneath all of this, because that was the thing about motherhood as well. I lost myself. I didn't know who I was. So the nervous system work and the coming back, I call it coming back home to myself, coming back to Avril. Who is she? What does she like to do? What are her values? Not what's the world's values, not what society's values. What are her values? And is she living into them? This was a big question for me. Is she living into them? Because what I thought were my values was not what was being reflected in my life. It was what I was prioritizing on a daily basis were not what my values were. So I had to do a lot of restructuring how I lived on a daily basis. There was a lot of releasing the stuff that no longer served me. So letting go of that stuff.
Yeah.
And it involved working with coaches. It involved, like I said, a lot of sitting with myself, getting really radically honest with myself as well, which is hard. It's hard to, be honest with ourselves and look in the mirror and say, actually, I get to choose. I get to choose something different. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I've said this week a few times on live, the hardest thing I ever had to do was work on me. Like that was the hardest thing I ever had to do. And then forgive me for not knowing and not allowing the energies of chaos and discord and regret to cause me to not reach my highest potential. So I can relate to you in regards when you say even realizing that the power is in our choice. That's what I discovered too, Avril. And having these conversations on Transparent Table Talk, it's like you all have been studying what I'm studying in my head. It's like the energy that we all share similar awakenings. So many of my guests that have signed up for this show, we all have experienced this same shift, in which let me know that this platform was needed. My next question is, what do you do on a daily basis to maintain? Because yes, we can have that shift. Yes, we can have that awakening. Yes, we could do that work. But what are you doing? Because the show is to show people that we have to constantly do the work. What do you do on a daily basis?
Well, every day I really focus on reconnecting to myself. So I actually have, and really practically, I have my phone set for every 2 hours throughout the day to come back and tune in with myself. So, and this looks like in that time when I come back, it's just like, it can be as brief as a minute, it can be 30 seconds, but I tune in with myself. Am I living in the way that I really want to live? So, or have I got caught up in something that isn't valuable to me? So I also in that time come back and do some nervous system work. So I will tap into some breathing. I'll move my body. I'll tune into how is my body actually feeling? Am I holding tension in my shoulders? Have I been clenching my jaw? Have I been breathing really shallow? And now I need to expand my breathing. Have I been sitting in the same place and my body needs to actually move? So that's on a practical thing. That's something I do is I set my alarm for every couple of hours and I tune into myself in those hours. In that time, I tune in. Are my needs being met? Have I had a drink of water? Have I had something to eat? Have I even gone to the toilet? Sounds so basic, but how many of us as women hold on when we need to go to the toilet. And that's a basic primitive need. And if we don't meet our basic needs, we're basically sending a message to ourselves that we can't trust ourselves because we won't meet our basic needs. If we did that to somebody else, they wouldn't keep hanging around because they couldn't trust, our children, for example, or other people. If we didn't support them to meet their needs, they would lose that trust in us. So we have to honor the building of trust in ourselves every single day and not fracture it and just keep that connection. So connecting to myself every day. I also make sure I do something that lights me up every day. So for me, that is usually time in nature. I get really connected to myself. I get really grounded in myself. And I also get really excited by nature because it's so magnificent. It's so humbling as well. It really brings me back to myself and how big we are, but also how small we are. I also tune into myself every day and ask, is this what I really want? So once again, it's bringing that question back to reminding myself I have a choice. Is this something I actually want to do, or am I being swayed by somebody else or led by somebody else? I practice a morning routine that varies what it looks like, but it's always space and time for me.
Right.
So maybe it's meditation, maybe it's breath work, maybe it's once again going for a walk. I'm very much tuned into what feels right for me this morning. And I also have a gratitude practice where I look at the end of the day of what really worked for me today. I'll also and be really grateful. What do I have that I'm grateful for? And I actually practice this with my son. So we practice it around the dinner table, and my husband if he's home for dinner. But we practice what are we grateful for today? What excited us about today? Is there something that we could do better for tomorrow? Is there something different that we want to choose? Because I really want to instill for my son that he also has the power of choice. And he also has the ability to choose how his life goes moving forward. Because growing up, I don't think that was something that was really instilled for me. It was just, I just thought I was in a box and I was going to stay in that box forever. I don't know, forever. I never questioned it, but I want my son to know he can follow his heart and his soul as well, and that will be supported by us. So yeah, those are mostly. Oh, there's one other thing: compassionate curiosity. When there's discomfort coming up in my life, or when there's a feeling that I don't particularly like, because it feels uncomfortable usually, not because I label it as bad or good, I try to get really compassionately curious with it on a daily basis. So what is this, where is this coming from?
Mm-hmm.
What is this trying to show me? So instead of judging it or trying to make it go away, or trying to make it different, just embracing it and just getting really curious.
Yeah.
What's this here for? Why is this here for me? Making it about why is this here for me? So that's what I do on a daily basis. It's, like I said, it looks different on any given day, and there's lots of different things intermingled with it, but that's kind of a breakdown of how I stay in tune with myself and make sure that every given day that I am living to my highest potential on that day, even if that day is spent in bed.
I love it. You know, and I too have that in common, and that's the reason why I asked that question. And just to recap the things you said, we have to become in tune with our spirit that's in us, through us, as we have to acknowledge ourselves, because in a society we were conditioned to put other people first. We were conditioned from a child to make sure that other people are okay. And so we grow up fearing rejection with the need to fit in. And it's something we don't talk about in society. So we're not even taught to become in tune with the spirit that's in us, through us, as us. The other thing is they got us worshiping something on the outside instead of realizing it's in us, and that we are all connected, and that it's the power is in our choice. The power is in our thinking. So, like you said, every 2 hours, look, let me remind myself, let me check and make sure that I'm working on me, because this is the practice that I need to do to operate, and I call it my highest frequency. I told my son today while I was cooking dinner, I said the challenge that we have is that we have to be true to who we are in this world that we are so conformed in. The slogan for my brand, in which you said, is can't be boxed, free to be me. Bougiewild is a brand that was given to me from people criticizing me and not allowing me to live my true, authentic self. Avril, I am a teenage mom, a high school dropout. I had 2 children by the time I was 17 years old. I am now the mother of 4. I've been on my own since I was 15 years old. And I grew up very fast, in which my revelations I had at a very young age. I'm 45 years old. I have 4 children. I have 5 grandchildren. And the shift that happened to me and what made me create this show is when I had my awakening. When I had my awakening and realized that, oh my God, I had been programmed. Oh my God, I done all of these things due to the conditioning, being raised in poverty, didn't know the importance of education. Looking at my family, all they doing is having babies. I go have me a baby. I go get me a job. And then realizing years later, oh my God, what did I do with my life? And I'm very open when I tell people regret almost made me lose my mind. And that's when the Holy Spirit said, Yolanda, don't allow what you didn't know to take you out. Do it now. So what I did was, after 20 years, I worked for the IRS. I was an IRS agent making 6 figures. I quit my job. And I no longer lived in fear. I now live in faith. Although, I don't have the sad story of being homeless. I went out at 15 years old and I went after it. I chased it. I lived the world, as far as the materialistic things, as far as the clothes, the shoes, the image, but I still was not content in my spirit. What you said about your child, I did pass down a lot of the irritation, aggravation, and frustration to my older set of children, because I didn't know. And so this is the reason why I created this show, because I see so many people that's living in suffering due to the conditioning of the mind, which is the hardest thing to reprogram. And we're not talking about it as a society. We're not talking about um how it's easy for us to focus on everything else and have the distractions and point the finger at everybody else, when we're really projecting what we feel and what we're going through internally. Because since I have healed, since I've done the work, and it was a lot of crying, it was a lot of praying, it was a lot of forgiving myself. It was a lot of having to go back to the little girl and just looking at my picture some days and just crying, just saying, I am so sorry, because I didn't know. It was not allowing the darkness of the regret, the shame to take over my mind, and actually having to die to the flesh, having to die to what I am as a result of the conditioning, and understanding the whole meaning of what being reborn is. It was a process in which it reminded me of labor. Um, when we go through labor, you go through a lot of pain, but when the baby comes, it's like, wow, at this baby, and you're happy. And that's what it was for me. It was labor intense. It was, and it's still on an everyday basis, getting up every day, listening to something positive. Like you said, being grateful, living in the now. Like, I can't look back. I can't worry about the future. It is living in the now that keeps me and allows me to go out and make my pain. I turned it into purpose. And so, when I hear you all story, it let me know that I am connected to the Holy Spirit, because the Holy Spirit is what led me to Transparent Table Talk. The Holy Spirit is what led me to say, you guys, we got to start talking from a humble, transparent, and a vulnerable place. We need to have these conversations because we are not broken. We can go from silent shame to self empowerment because the Holy Spirit is in us, through us, as us. So now, Avril, my next question is, if you could have a conversation with someone that's going through what you experience, what would you say to them?
First thing I would say to them was, I am here to listen to what is going on for you. Because so many people do not feel seen and do not feel heard for what's actually going on for them. And so many people know what they need to, not what they need to do, but they know they have something inside of them that is so much greater, but they just don't know how to tap into it. They know they're here for so much more, but they just don't know how to get out of what they're in. So the first thing I would do is just listen. Just hold that sacred space for them. Then I would move on to, you're not wrong. You're not broken. This this is where you are right now can be the catalyst for you choosing something powerful moving forward, choosing to turn this into something bigger than you can even imagine, because none of us know where we're going to go. When we're in that really broken place, it's hard to imagine where we're feeling broken. It's hard to imagine anything beyond that. But knowing that there's something greater out there can be really powerful. It can really get that fire lit inside of us. So yeah, like I said, the first thing I would do is listen to them. Just be that space, because they may never have had somebody holding that space for them before in a way that was non-judgmental and non-conditional. And then I would right now, I feel I would be called to just getting them to place their hand on their heart and tap into the essence of who they are in that space. Because when we tap into this place, when we tap into this piece below our head, so much of the conditioning is up here. Our body remembers. When you tap into your heart, that heart that's beating for you is exactly the same heart that beat for you when you were born. For you, over 4 decades ago. For me, over 4 decades ago. That same heart that came out as that innocent baby is still the heart that is beating for you. And we need to be able to tap into that trust and that heartbeat and the essence of who we are beneath the conditioning. So we have to get into our bodies, and just that hand on the heart is so powerful in supporting us to do that.
And my last question that I asked, as an adult now, and you thinking back as a child and going back and just reflecting as that little girl, what is that conversation that you wish someone would have had with you as a child to help you understand what was getting ready to go on uh, as you grow up? What would, if you were that little girl, let's say you were 10 or 11 years old, what is a conversation you wish someone would have had with you that would have helped you understand about what's going on in this world?
Oh, I wish somebody had told me that I didn't need to change myself to try to fit in, that there was nothing wrong with me in the beginning, that who I was enough exactly as I am. Um, yeah, I think that would, I know that's short and simple, but it would have been so that I didn't feel I had to stay in that box. Um, yeah, because it's so much of what and I also wish that they would have told me that it was okay for me to be so sensitive. It was okay for me to to feel things deeply, and that there was tools and strategies that they could use to support, that I could use to support me to 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 be able to be with the pain, that to be able to be with the immenseness of what was going on without it breaking me, without it feeling so big that I had to push it all away. And I also wish someone would have told me just what a miracle it was for me to be who I was, that I had so much power inside of me that I did not need it from somebody else out there. Because, man, we spend a lot of time looking out there for the answers and the power and the solutions. When we come back here, we have so much inside of us.
It's in us, through us, and as you all heard from Avril today, all the way from New Zealand. Bougiewild is bringing people together around the world on Transparent Table Talk. And this is evidence that we are all connected. All we have to do is tune in to this energy that's in us, through us, as us. As I explain to people, this flesh is just a shell, but what about the energy? What makes my eyes blink? What makes my hands move? Because one day this energy is going to be gone. So it's so important for us to become in tune with who we are. It's so important for us to understand that the power that we have to make a choice to live good, feel good, do good, know good. Nothing happened to you as a child that have you living in shame or blame was your fault or had anything to do with you. You were vulnerable. We didn't know. We were all conditioned, as you can hear from Avril today, all the way growing up in Ireland. She also experienced the conditioning, and we're not talking about it as a society, but we are on Transparent Table Talk because the purpose is to heal. The purpose is to bring awareness. The purpose is to let you know that there's power in you to make the choice. Thank you again so much, Avril, for coming to Transparent Table Talk. You did mention that you coach moms. Would you share how people can find you?
Yeah, so at this stage, I'm on Facebook at Avril Brown and Instagram at Avril1Brown. And you can just reach out to me there or just follow my content. I post content pretty much all the time. And yeah, just reach out to me there if you're interested in knowing anything more.
Thank you so much. Again, you are not broken from silent shame to self-empowerment. This is proof that once we speak our truth, it sets us free. Again, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Transparent Table Talk, where we talk about life from a humble, transparent, and a vulnerable place. Thank you so much again, Avril, and you enjoyed this beautiful evening.
Thank you.
Bougiewild, 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 Bougiewild. I said the universe gave it to me. I said the universe gave it to me. Bougiewild, 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 Bougiewild. I said the universe gave it to me. I said the universe gave it to me. Bougiewild. I'm free to be me, it's what you see in my energy. I'm real with myself, I don't conform to society. I'm free to be me, it's the only way for me to stay true to my